Honestly, my biggest fear ever since I started vlogging was, but what if I wake up and my children are just staring at a wall all day and there's nothing to film? That is legitimately my biggest fear.
If I hear one more word, get out!
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help.
Police officers, open up!
It sounds like a horror movie.
2.5 million people were watching every single week. A mother, 6 kids, a faith-centered family in Utah, all of it streamed directly into living rooms across America. The channel was called 8 Passengers, and for years it looked exactly like what it claimed to be: wholesome, real, a family inviting you in, a family you felt like you knew. But here is what nobody talks about enough. When the cameras were off, and sometimes even when they were on, something else entirely was happening inside that house. Something that 18,000 people tried to report to the authorities. Something that Child Protective Services investigated multiple times and walked away from each time, stamping case after case with a single word: unfounded. Something that a 2.5 million person audience watched week after week without ever fully seeing what was right in front of them. And then one morning in August of 2023, a 12-year-old boy showed up at a stranger's front door, starving, dehydrated, his legs in restraints. He said only one thing. He said he had come from Jody. When police followed that name back to its source, the officers who walked into that house said it was unlike anything they had ever encountered in their careers. Some of them said it in exactly those words. And the photographs taken that day, the ones that every major news outlet chose to blur out, the ones that even the program 2020 would not show. Clearly, those photographs tell a story that does not fit inside your head once you understand what you are actually looking at. So how does a family become one of the most watched on YouTube, and the children still end up completely invisible? That is the question this entire case forces you to sit with, and by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly how it happened. Every step, every missed signal, every decision that moved things further in the wrong direction, every person who should have acted and did not. And you are going to understand something else too. Something that most coverage of this case glosses over entirely, because this story is not just about one family.
What Ruby has done, it just crossed a line of abusive to just psychotic.
Weird things started happening. Ruby said the children were demonically possessed.
Our entire schedule revolved around YouTube. It felt more like a set than a house.
Sit her down on the flipping couch!
Okay, move it!
If I hear one more word, get out!
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door. He's got duct taped around each ankle. He's obviously covered in wounds.
Before we go any further, drop a comment right now and tell me what city you are watching from, what time it is where you are, and what the weather looks like outside your window. I read every single one. And if you are new here and you value real research, human voiceover, and the details that actually matter, hit subscribe. I do not rush this. Let's get into the case. A Utah mother of 6 who built a massive online following by sharing what she called tough love parenting advice has now been formally charged with serious felony offenses related to her conduct as a parent. What made this story so devastating to so many people was that for years, her face was everywhere. Her parenting was publicly celebrated. Her family was held up as some kind of ideal to aspire to. Mothers across the country watched her videos and took notes. In 2015, Ruby Franke and her husband Kevin Franke launched a family vlog channel on YouTube called 8 Passengers. The concept was simple: document their life raising 6 children and invite the world to watch. Some of those children are adults today, so their names are used openly in this account. But for the younger ones who are still minors, only their initials will be used throughout this story to protect their identities. Their 6 children were Sherry, Chad, and the 4 younger kids referred to here by the initials A, J, R, and E. When the channel launched, family vlogging was riding a wave of enormous popularity on YouTube, and the Franke family grew faster than almost anyone could have anticipated. After only 2 years, 8 Passengers had already crossed 1 million subscribers. Think about that. 1 million people watching one family in just 2 years. The channel, managed primarily by Ruby, focused on the kind of content that resonated with a very specific audience: cooking meals, getting children ready for school, going on family outings, taking vacations, and attending church. 8 Passengers became part of a growing wave of LDS or Mormon family vlog channels, which gave stay-at-home mothers a genuine way to earn income while managing their households and raising their children. Unlike some channels that kept their faith quietly in the background, the Frankists were always openly outspoken about their religious beliefs and made those beliefs a defining part of their brand. In the early days, they drew in a loyal and devoted following of viewers who found their content both relatable and genuinely entertaining. At their absolute peak, that following reached 2.5 million subscribers. Sponsors lined up eagerly to reach the precise demographic. Ruby had built mothers running households who trusted her voice and valued her recommendations. However, after what became known as the ad apocalypse on YouTube, videos featuring content aimed at children were largely demonetized, and sponsorship deals became the financial backbone for family vlog channels everywhere. Ruby herself stated publicly that sponsorships during that period earned their channel millions of dollars. That financial success also inspired the rest of her family. All of Ruby's siblings eventually launched their own YouTube channels and built significant audiences of their own. Now, most YouTubers face some level of criticism. That is simply the nature of the platform. And often, viewers who raise genuine concerns get dismissed as haters or trolls, brushed aside before anyone takes a closer look. The 8 Passengers channel attracted critics from its very beginning, and the concerns being raised were not just about style, they were about substance. Ruby, who served as the primary filmmaker and editor of the videos, did not limit herself to the cheerful, milestone-driven moments that most family channels choose to highlight. She also posted content covering her children's punishments, their embarrassing personal moments, their medical situations, and intimate details about their schooling. Many viewers voiced strong concern that the Frankie children were having their entire lives documented online without any real say in the matter, and that growing up so completely exposed could eventually take a serious toll on their mental health and sense of self. There were even instances where Ruby directed her children to participate in sponsorship segments, including asking them to openly discuss using overnight diapers for bedwetting, even after those children were already attending elementary school. Other intimate moments were captured and uploaded as well. The girls' first time shaving their legs, shopping for bras, going on dates, visiting the doctor, being filmed while visibly unwell. The level of access felt deeply invasive to a growing number of viewers, but the content itself was only part of what was alarming people. Over time, and especially as some of the children grew older, Ruby and Kevin began discussing their parenting styles and forms of discipline more openly on camera. The consequences they described became harder and harder to dismiss as normal. There were countless examples, but some stood out in ways that viewers found genuinely disturbing. One of the most viral moments from the entire 8 Passengers channel came when Ruby received a text message from the kindergarten teacher of her then 6-year-old daughter, E. The teacher explained that E had forgotten her lunch and asked whether Ruby could bring it to the school, and the answer Ruby gave was captured on camera for the world to see.
Just got a text message from teacher, and she said that did not pack a lunch today, and can I bring a lunch over to the school? This happens quite often when you're raising children, because I know that her teacher is uncomfortable with her being hungry and not having a lunch, and it would ease her discomfort if I came to the school with a lunch. But I responded and just said I was responsible for making her lunches in the morning, and she actually told me she did pack a lunch. So the natural outcome is she's just going to need to be hungry, and hopefully nobody gives her food and nobody steps in and gives her a lunch.
Some viewers, of course, believe that refusing to bring a 6-year-old her forgotten lunch was not a natural consequence at all. It went far beyond what any reasonable person would consider appropriate. An adult who forgets their lunch has options. They can buy a replacement, return home to retrieve it, ask someone to help. A child that young has no money, no transportation, and no meaningful option except to ask her parent or her teacher for help, which is precisely what parents exist to provide. And yet, that was how Ruby chose to respond, on camera, for millions of people to watch. What is important to understand is that this was not an isolated moment. This was part of a pattern, and that pattern was growing. Stay with me, because what comes next is the part that almost no one fully connects until they see the whole picture laid out. Because the lunch incident was not the worst thing that happened in that house. Not by a long way. And the path from one to the other is something you need to understand if you want to make sense of how this ended. Viewers who regularly watched 8 Passengers began to notice that Ruby and Kevin's oldest son, Chad, along with the 2 youngest children, seemed to be quietly designated as the problem children of the family. They consistently received the harshest consequences, many of which went viral on their own. In one particularly striking video, Ruby and Kevin addressed their audience to explain a decision they had made, characterizing the children involved in deeply dismissive terms that alarmed many viewers. They announced that for Christmas that year, instead of receiving gifts, those children would be receiving what they called the gift of truth and love.
Knowing people these days, I don't know if people are gonna, how they're gonna respond. So Kevin and I, we have 6 children. The 2 youngest are showing long patterns of selfishness. They have been showing through their choices, their unwillingness to repent, their unwillingness to feel sorrow over some pretty egregious choices that they've made. So Kevin and I have decided that we are going to give the gift of truth to them this year for Christmas. So we sat down with them and we told these 2 what our expectations were again. And we let them know how deeply sorrowful we've been because of the choices that they've been making and how it's affected their teachers at school. It's affected their peers. It's affected our home, the siblings. And we just laid it out very clear. And we told them that this year they are not going to be visited by Santa. So they will, and we prepped them. We let them know that the Christmas morning, their 4 older siblings will be getting Christmas presents to open, and that they will have the gift of love from their dad and I, because we want them to really have a visceral experience that hits them. So up until now, I was really hoping that keeping them home from school and wiping the floorboards would really bring pain. Like, oh my gosh, I really want to change this behavior that I've been exhibiting. And it wasn't painful for them. They're like, oh yay, we get to stay home from school and clean floorboards. This is kind of fun. It's like, so, they've had these visceral experiences, and they haven't affected them. It's because they're so numb. And so the more numb your child is, the greater experience, the bigger the outcome. They need to wake them up. You're not going to push a boulder with just your hands. You need some real leverage. And the biggest leverage that a little child has is probably Santa Claus. And so I expressed to them that I love your soul more than anything in this world. And I literally would do anything to invite you into repentance. And I know parents say that. I would do anything for my kid. But really, what I think most parents are saying is, I would give anything to you if I would pay any price monetarily. I don't know how many parents are actually willing to put any boundary in place that would bring a turnaround, that would really bring repentance. So that is our gift.
At the time, both of those children were under 10 years old. Based on the footage Ruby posted herself, they appeared to be entirely normal, typical young kids. In other videos, Ruby was seen harshly scolding R for something as minor as leaving his socks outside, and he was then made to do push-ups as a consequence.
You're gonna have to go find your shorts. Oh, did you see the socks you threw at the side of the garden? And you are not going anywhere unless you pick up your junk. You've got crap strewn all around. Now, so you see, now I'm using bad language. That's how bad of a mood I'm in. You get your socks picked up and don't you leave your stuff out anymore.
Where?
Right over there. Run and go pick them up. And then give me 10 push-ups. Put them in your pockets so you can take them down to the hamper and drop and give me 10.
1.
Put your hands straight out. They're in. They're not supposed to be out. Shape your hands forward. There you go. 1, 2, down further. Bring your butt down.
As troubling as those examples already were, the most extreme consequences were directed consistently at Chad. In multiple videos, Ruby and Kevin publicly embarrassed him by reading his private text messages out loud at the dinner table, forcing him to discuss personal matters that should never have been aired in front of a camera, let alone millions of strangers. But the year 2020 brought a development that alarmed even some of the channel's most loyal supporters. Chad was suddenly gone. He simply vanished from the channel's content, and Ruby offered no explanation for his absence. It was eventually discovered that they had sent him away to a controversial wilderness camp designed for struggling teenagers,
where he's going to spend the next 8 to 10 weeks living in the
Anasazi Desert.
yeah, the desert mountains of Arizona. So you're probably wondering, what did Chad do? Okay, we're not even going to entertain that stuff, but it's an accumulation of things over years, well before we ever started YouTubing or well before we ever got into social media.
These types of camps have come under fierce public scrutiny in recent years, as survivors came forward with deeply disturbing accounts of mistreatment. But even after Chad came home, the punishments did not stop. He was made to sleep on a beanbag placed in the middle of the living room floor. His bed had been taken away, his bedroom had been taken away, and that arrangement lasted 7 months.
My bedroom was taken away for 7 months, and then you give it back like a couple weeks ago.
I don't think our viewers know that.
You've been sleeping on a beanbag.
I've been sleeping on a beanbag since October, and they gave my room back like 2 weeks ago.
And the things that we show and share, and the things that many of you are criticizing and calling are actually things that mental health professionals have counseled us to do.
We got accused of child abuse when we sent Chad to Anasazi. Guess what? The first thing that they did was take a bed away.
All of these incidents, taken together, prompted a significant public response. Concerned viewers filed multiple reports with DCFS, the State Child and Family Services Agency. A petition calling for a formal investigation into Ruby and Kevin Franke gathered nearly 18,000 signatures. And yet, at the time, all of those reports were officially deemed unfounded. The system reviewed what it reviewed and moved on. Even so, the spotlight on the Franke family had clearly intensified. The channel's output grew increasingly irregular. What had once been daily uploads shifted to every other day, and then gradually to no consistent schedule at all. Around this same period, Ruby attempted to launch her own clothing company, which she called Ruby Do. It was largely unsuccessful. By 2022, new videos on the 8 Passengers channel had stopped appearing entirely, but Ruby had not disappeared from the internet. After the failure of the clothing line, she began attending life coaching and therapy sessions through a company called Connections. She eventually started making regular appearances on that business's own YouTube channel called Connections Classroom, run by its founder, Jody Hildebrandt. Jody's name had actually surfaced before. Chad had briefly mentioned her in an earlier video when he discussed his wilderness camp experience, referring to her at the time as his therapist.
Yesterday with my therapist, and she taught me about truth and distortion. Mom probably talks about Jody all the time, but
I've mentioned Jody a few times. She has a podcast called Connections with an X.
So why was Ruby now developing a close relationship with a woman who had previously worked with her son as a client? The answer, it turns out, runs deeper than most people initially realized. Jody was not only Chad's therapist at one point in his life, Ruby and Kevin had also sought help from her when their own marriage was struggling. She had access to this family from multiple directions at once. 54-year-old Jody Hildebrandt operated under the title of therapist, though that designation, as we will see, deserves serious scrutiny. Like the Franke family, she was from Utah and was a member of the LDS Church. She was married briefly during the 1990s, had 2 children before that marriage ended in divorce, and had been single ever since. In 2009, Jody was placed on an official list of recommended therapists for members of the LDS Church who were seeking help with various personal issues, ranging from marriage counseling to addiction counseling. However, several of Jody's former clients came forward with deeply troubling allegations. They claimed that she had been relaying their most personal disclosures from therapy sessions directly to church officials, a serious breach of professional confidentiality. And here is the thing, one of those allegations was actually proven. As a result, her professional license was placed on probation for 18 months. Not revoked, not permanently suspended. Just probation. Think about that for a moment, and keep it in mind for everything that comes next. After the 8 Passengers YouTube channel fizzled out, Ruby reinvented herself as a life coach and was listed as a certified mental fitness trainer under Jody's organization known as Connections. To anyone who had been following Ruby for years, the shift did not feel entirely surprising. When Jody began appearing in their shared videos, the messaging felt familiar, as if Ruby's existing worldview had simply been turned up to the highest possible volume, and then louder still. Now, I want you to pay close attention to what comes next, because understanding how Connections actually worked is the key to understanding everything that happened to those children. This is not just background. This is the mechanism. This is how it was built to function. The website jodyhildebrandt.com explains in careful detail what Connections claims to offer its clients. The core teaching rests on one central concept, that in order for a person to achieve what Jody calls a true connection with another human being, that person must not be in what she refers to as distortion. Distortion is a term Jody invented herself, and she applied it remarkably broadly. According to her framework, distortion could mean being addicted to work, shopping, gaming, sleep, social media, driving, receiving compliments, exercise, eating, certain substances, physical intimacy, hobbies, or even one's own spouse. The list was almost endless. Honestly, the definition was written so broadly that almost any human behavior or emotional state could qualify. And that, one might reasonably suspect, was exactly the point. If virtually every person could be told they were in distortion in some way, then virtually every person became a potential client. Jody taught that there were 3 core principles required to truly connect with anyone and to stay free of distortion. Those 3 core principles of Connections were impeccable honesty, rigorous personal responsibility, and humility. She also actively encouraged clients to bring their family members into the program so that those individuals could experience true connection as well. Notice what that last part does. It is not just about helping the individual client. The goal is expansion. The goal is to bring more people in. And the mechanism for doing that, the pressure, the language, the framework, is built directly into the belief system itself. Here is where it got complicated. As members continued deepening their bonds within the group, they simultaneously began distancing themselves from the people outside of it, their family members, their longtime friends. Those on the outside became confused by unfamiliar language, terms like distortion and a whole range of other specialized vocabulary that Jody presented as the only and absolute framework for human connection. Those outsiders were then encouraged to enroll in classes so that they too could learn how to avoid distortion. If those family members or friends raised questions or expressed concern about the teachings, the student almost immediately turned to the Connections support group, treating the outside conversation itself as a form of distortion to be avoided. And for those who refused to learn the new framework, the consequence was straightforward. They were cut off. Relationships were severed on the grounds that the other person was too deeply in distortion. In addition to the Connections 101 classes, members attended group meetings and weekly sessions with Jody herself, where they discussed in an intimate setting the ways in which they had been in distortion during the prior week. The revenue generated from these classes and group sessions was conservatively estimated to exceed $30,000 per month. Now, there was another deeply concerning element to all of this. Jody did not simply build a secular self-help program. She heavily wove her own teachings and her own version of truth together with the teachings of the LDS Church. It was a pattern that felt reminiscent of other troubling cases. Lori Vallow comes to mind immediately. In Connections, the word truth was consistently capitalized, as if to suggest that Jody's truth carried the same divine weight as the Word of God himself. That was not merely an interpretation from the outside, it was an explicit parallel built directly into the program. And the Connections framework did not limit itself to adult relationships. It extended fully into the realm of parenting as well. Ruby at one point stated plainly and without hesitation that she loved these truths more than she loved her own children. She also stated that she did not love her children unconditionally. Hearing it said aloud, in those exact words, was deeply unsettling in a way that is difficult to overstate.
Principles more than my child.
Yikes!
That's a really, and that is the truth.
It was just so profoundly disturbing to hear someone say those words out loud and speak about these invented principles as though they carried divine authority. Ruby and Jody discussed many different topics together, but the conversations that disturbed people the most were the ones centered on children and parenting. Now, if a group of consenting adults chose to adopt unusual beliefs and follow a complicated and possibly unhealthy program, that was ultimately their decision. But when children were brought into that picture, when deeply concerning behavioral frameworks were imposed on them without their understanding or consent, that was something entirely different. Children could not simply choose to leave. They could not evaluate the situation from a safe distance and decide to walk away.
It started.
There we are. Hi, we are live in Mapleton, Utah at a home of somebody who is learning how to be a mental fitness trainer. And we have Ruby here. And Ruby is a part of the original 10 women that are being trained to become mental fitness trainers. So Ruby, you want to tell us about what a mental fitness trainer is?
Yes. So we are getting mentally fit the same way your body would get physically fit by running and lifting weights and working with a personal trainer. We are getting ready to be your mental fitness trainer. We're getting truth, really easy to teach. We're making it very simple, boiling it down to principles. That's how you're going to understand truth, is really knowing principles, being able to put words to it and help you, and you're going to feel so much better.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to span over here. We've got, okay, can't see.
There we go.
Tori and Sherry. How are you feeling about what you're getting ready to go out and do? Teaching truth to the world.
Excited.
So excited.
Excited.
Yeah.
Coming to a town near you. And here's Kim and Jess.
Hello.
Becky, Liz, Michelle. And then we got Johnny over there. Johnny.
And Johnny.
And Johnny.
And me.
And
there's Pam.
Did you get Pam?
Nope, Pam's over here.
Pam. Hello. Johnny is our male person who comes in and does the role play for the male, so we can practice. So he's quite talented to do the role plays with us. So we appreciate Johnny. Johnny's a man of truth as well, and he's also a mental fitness trainer. So glad that you're with us. And any of you who are interested in becoming a mental fitness trainer, we are going to open that up to train other people. So give us a call or email us at support@connectionsclassroom.com, and maybe you can come to the next retreat for the...
This is Connections according to Jody.
And so let me tell you a little bit about what I've been doing. For the last 20 years, I've been trying to figure out how to help my clientele. I've been working with tens of thousands of people for 20 years, and I've been asking God about how to help heal them from this array of mental and emotional illness, okay? And so I have been on this journey trying to understand how to use principles that are God's in helping people heal.
That was a clip from the Eternal Core Conference in April of 2020. In it, Jody described the personal history that she believed led her to construct this entire belief system. She grew up as the sixth of 7 children, and she described her own parents as emotionally shut down. None of the children were truly allowed to express their emotions at all, except through anger. And so, over time, she learned to perform. She learned how to appear nice, kind, helpful, and gracious to the people around her, while something else entirely was happening beneath the surface.
Sure enough, I ended up with an eating disorder, right? I started trying to control everything because I had no outlet to emote my emotions. I had nobody there to validate me and say, yeah, that makes sense that when your brother, puts you into a pretzel, that would hurt and that you would want to tell him stop. You don't like that. I wasn't allowed to do that. Here's the key. This is the key. Responsibility. Responsibility. I am responsible for 3 things. I've learned this over the last decade plus. I am responsible for my own perception, which means my thoughts. And then when I perceive, I then feel emotions. And when I feel emotions, it's because of my perceptions. And when I perceive and then feel emotions, then I then choose to behave. And so I'm responsible for that whole process in everything, even when I'm depressed. So when I talk to people, they'll say, yeah, that's nice and good, but I have depression. And I'm like, okay, wait, stop. You missed what I just said to you. And then they'll say to me, are you suggesting that I'm responsible for my depression? And I'll say, yes, you are. That's one thing. If you don't know me, I'm really blunt. Really direct. Some people hate that. Some people love that. It's like, tell me more.
According to Jody's framework, without the essential principles of truth, honesty, responsibility, and vulnerability, a person became disconnected and began to manifest control, aggression, and anxiety in their relationships. She said that the only things any person could truly control were their own thoughts, their own feelings, and their own behavioral choices. Nothing else. She then used the parent-child relationship as a specific example to illustrate how attempting to control another person represented a fundamental failure to live in truth.
I wish I could get them to do what I want them to do, and you just can't. But when you try, you then disconnect from them. because you go into a controlling posture. You go into a dynamic instead of a relationship with them. So people will say, well, if I love this person, then how do I get them to, and I'm like, can you hear how you're going down control lane? You can't get them to. Your job is to speak the truth to them about their responsibility, which is they're responsible for their own perceptions, their own feelings, and their own behavioral choices. So no more of this. You made me do this. Because of you, I feel. If you wouldn't have done that, then I wouldn't have done this. All of that is called distortion, which means distorting the truth.
So attempting to control others was, by definition, a form of distortion. And yet, in that same line of reasoning, Jody went on to say that every single one of her students was personally responsible for learning these principles, and that if a person held any charge over another, whether that meant children, grandchildren, clients, or anyone else under their care, that person carried an active responsibility to teach those principles to them as well, so that they too could be released from distortion. The next portion of her teachings was particularly striking, because Jody went on to claim that she had not simply developed this framework through research or personal experience. She said that God told her about distortion.
Was teaching about shame, and I went to God and I said, people can't understand the word shame. Do you have another word? Can you give me another word? And I heard one day, distorting the truth. And I was like, oh, brilliant! Distortion. Every single one of us goes into distortion.
I want you to hold that thought, because what comes next, what happens on August 30th of 2023, is the moment where everything that came before it finally becomes impossible to ignore. And it starts with a little boy standing on a stranger's porch, in a condition that nobody who saw him that day will ever forget. On that morning, a man called 911 after a young boy appeared at his front door, hungry and extremely thirsty. The little boy identified himself only as R and said that he had come from Jody. That was all the man and his wife needed to understand, that something was very wrong and that this child needed help urgently. And so they called 911.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. And he's said he just came from a neighbor's house, and we know there's been problems at this neighbor's house. He's emaciated, he's got tape around his legs, he's hungry, and he's thirsty. And he asked us to call the police. So he's very afraid.
Okay, and are the neighbors out of their home, or is anybody looking for them that you can see?
No. Our homes are far enough away. I'm not sure. How did you get out of the house?
Porch. He went out.
He said you just left through the porch at the neighbor's house. Her name is Jody Hildebrand, and she lives 2 doors up the street.
Out here in Cayenne, the houses are far apart.
Yeah, out here in Cayenne, the houses are far apart, so he walked just under a block to get to our house. He rang my doorbell.
As police were making their way into the neighborhood, they were stopped by Jody herself, who was driving slowly through the area in her car. She told the officers that she was out looking for a boy. The police informed her that they were also out looking for a boy, the very same boy. Jody responded calmly, telling them that she would go ahead and wait at her house. But once the officers arrived at the neighbor's house and actually laid eyes on R, it was immediately and undeniably clear. This child needed help, and he needed it right away. The officers removed the restraints from his legs and moved him into the ambulance. I am consciously not going to describe what those officers found when they looked at this child. There is enough information available in public court records if you want to research further. What I can tell you is that what those officers encountered in those moments was something that most of them had never seen in their careers, and it would stay with them. When one of the officers asked R how he had ended up in that condition, he said it was caused by restraints that Jody and his mother Ruby had placed on him. He also told the officers something that was almost impossible to believe. He said that Jody and Ruby had applied cayenne pepper and honey directly to the affected areas as a kind of dressing, not medical treatment. Not care, something else entirely. Some of the photographs taken of this child at the hospital are so distressing that virtually every media outlet chose to obscure them. Even mainstream news organizations, even the program 2020 Everyone blurred them out because they are truly devastating to look at. I am not going to describe what those images show. The documentation exists in public court records if you choose to look deeper into this case. What I will say is that what is visible in those photographs tells a story about what this child endured that simply does not fit in your head, and that should never happen to any child. What the record showed was that this boy had clearly been without adequate care or nourishment for a very long time, and it showed in a way that was impossible to miss and impossible to misread. The physical state he was found in reflected a prolonged period of systematic deprivation that left everyone who reviewed this case profoundly shaken. He is, honestly, a hero in every sense of the word, and I mean that in the most literal way possible. Because what you are about to learn about everything R had already been through before he walked out that door, everything that had been done to him before that morning, makes that walk the most significant and courageous act in this entire story. Remember that, as we go forward, as R was taken to the hospital, attention quickly shifted to locating his siblings, who R said were still inside the house. Now, it is hard to know what exactly Jody was thinking at that moment, but she acted completely surprised and behaved as though nothing out of the ordinary had been happening when police officers arrived at the door.
Police officers, open up! Jody, I need you to step out.
I have my turn.
That's great. Step out of the house.
No, I'm not going to step out of the
Step
house.
out of the house. Step out of the house.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
We're just going to see if
Whoa,
anybody
whoa,
else.
whoa.
Is there anybody else home?
Wait a minute, how do you come to my house?
Right there.
Look, they go on into my house.
Just have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant?
Have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant?
Have a seat right there. I'll explain everything after. Have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant, sir?
We're searching the house.
I can tell you what's in the house.
Okay. Just have a seat right there for me.
Do you have a search warrant?
We'll explain it after this.
You can't just come into my house without a search warrant.
We'll explain everything after this, ma'am. Okay. Well, that's one of the reasons why we're here.
So the officers would explain everything once the house had been cleared and they were satisfied it was safe to do so.
So we'll explain after everything's done, after we clear the house and make sure everything's fine in there.
But why are you coming into my house without a
We'll
search warrant?
explain it after this.
But that doesn't make sense. You come into my house and do what you want, and then you tell me you don't have a
No,
warrant?
we'll explain why we did.
But don't you have to have a warrant?
Not at this moment, we don't. We're here on exigent circumstances, and I'll explain it after this.
They would explain the reason for their presence. But Jody asked whether they needed a warrant. In that moment, the officers made clear they did not. Jody told the police that Ruby was on her way back from Springville, where Ruby actually lived, 4 hours away. Jody also said there was only one other child inside the home. She then stood outside on the phone with her attorney while officers conducted a thorough search of the property. What struck everyone present was her demeanor. She seemed more concerned about whether her attorney might miss a flight and whether some Airbnb guests would be alarmed than she was about what was actually unfolding with the children.
She'll be 10 next week.
Okay. And she's on this side?
Mm-hmm. I have Airbnb guests over there. Probably scared them to death.
Okay.
Adam, I know you have a flight to catch, so they're just...
Well, so they're in your home because you lied to them about...
Yeah, I've got a police officer standing right here.
Okay.
So, I don't want you to miss your flight, so...
Well, I'm not going to miss my flight. I'm okay for a minute.
Okay.
Have they found her yet?
Yeah. They think there's somebody else in the house. There's not.
And yes, that detail is as jarring as it sounds. There were Airbnb guests staying inside this home at the very same time that R and E were allegedly being held and subjected to what investigators would later describe as a prolonged and deeply troubling pattern of mistreatment. Guests were sleeping in that house while all of this was happening. It is difficult to fully process. According to what R had told authorities, he had 2 sisters inside the house, but officers were initially only able to locate one child. She was found hiding inside a closet in the bathroom. There was some initial confusion about whether the child was a boy or a girl, but after speaking with R at the hospital, officers learned that this was in fact his little sister E, and that her head had been shaved. That explained the confusion. R also told police that he had not seen his sister in over a month. These were siblings living under the same roof, and he had not laid eyes on her in over 30 days. When officers approached E, she was terrified. She would not come out of the closet. Various medics and officers took turns trying to reassure her, letting her know that she was safe and that they were there to help. She asked for pizza, so they brought her a personal-sized pizza and a drink. She ate every bit of it and was still hungry, so they ordered a large pizza and she went on to eat 2 more slices of that. The image of a frightened, hungry child slowly beginning to trust strangers with food is one of the most quietly heartbreaking details of this entire case.
You don't want to talk? Okay. There's nothing at all you want to talk about? It's okay to talk to me. Are you scared?
And yes, that detail is as jarring as it sounds. There were Airbnb guests staying inside this home at the very same time that R and E were allegedly being held and subjected to what investigators would later describe as a prolonged and deeply troubling pattern of mistreatment. Guests were sleeping in that house while all of this was happening. It is difficult to fully process. According to what R had told authorities, he had 2 sisters inside the house, but officers were initially only able to locate 1 child. She was found hiding inside a closet in the bathroom. There was some initial confusion about whether the child was a boy or a girl, but after speaking with R at the hospital, officers learned that this was in fact his little sister E, and that her head had been shaved. That explained the confusion. R also told police that he had not seen his sister in over a month. These were siblings living under the same roof, and he had not laid eyes on her in over 30 days. When officers approached E, she was terrified. She would not come out of the closet. Various medics and officers took turns trying to reassure her, letting her know that she was safe and that they were there to help. She asked for pizza, so they brought her a personal-sized pizza and a drink. She ate every bit of it and was still hungry, so they ordered a large pizza and she went on to eat 2 more slices of that. The image of a frightened, hungry child slowly beginning to trust strangers with food is one of the most quietly heartbreaking details of this entire case.
I'm a psychologist. I've watched people flip things all the time. So I get it. I sit on your side. I get it.
She presented herself as reasonable and sympathetic, suggesting that if they only knew all the pieces, they would have empathy for her situation. She framed herself as someone with nothing to hide, while carefully avoiding any direct answers.
You guys seem nice people. Yeah. I'm not doing anything. I'm trying to be difficult. This is really, if you knew all the pieces, I think you'd have a lot of empathy. I'd like to just tell you, but I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're gonna flip my words. I don't know. And I'm an honest person as well, so we get along great. And he just said, do not say anything.
Ruby, on the other hand, took a completely different approach. She refused to speak at all, and while that is technically within her rights, she would not even confirm whether she had children. She went completely silent, not a single word offered. She sat there and said nothing for the entirety of the interview. Not a word about her son, who had just been found in that condition. Not a word about her daughter, who had been pulled out of a closet 6 hours after officers arrived. Nothing.
It's yours if you want it. We'll say that. How's that?
We also have snacks if you need anything to eat. So I know I introduced myself to you earlier, but my name is Detective Bates, and this is Sergeant Tobler. We're just here to talk to you about kind of a few things involving your kids. So first, do you live down here, or? Or do you live up north? Do you want to talk to me about where you live or how many kids you have? So we just spoke with your husband and he said you guys have 6 kids. Are those all together? Are those all your kids? I can wait all day, so it's up to you if you want to talk to us about what's going on. Would you feel more comfortable talking to one of us?
Or do you want me to I can step out if you want?
Or if you feel more comfortable talking to him, I can step out.
I'll wait till I have a lawyer.
Okay. Do you want to answer that? Or you don't want to talk to us about anything?
So yeah, this is just your chance to tell us. We're just trying to get your side of the story. So it's your chance to do that. But it's up to you. We're just here to talk. And I mean, I'm not asking any criminal questions. If you don't want to talk to us, just let us know and we'll be done.
The officers made it clear that if she did not want to talk, they were prepared to end the interview. She said nothing.
I've already told you.
That you want a lawyer? Okay. Easy enough.
Thank you.
Once news of the arrests began to spread, many people found themselves asking the same questions. How exactly did things reach this point? How did a mother who built a following on parenting advice arrive at a place where her children were found in this condition? How did she allow it to happen? And what about Ruby's husband, Kevin Franke? Did he have any awareness of what had been going on? Where had he been while all of this was unfolding? He was interviewed. What he said was striking. He had not seen his family in over a year. Let that sentence sit for a moment. A father of 6 children. He had not seen them in over a year. And when investigators told him what they had found, the first thing he asked about was not his son. It was not his daughter. I will come back to that detail, because it tells you something important about what Kevin actually understood.
I haven't seen them for over a year.
Any of them?
No, none of them.
For a year.
Over a year.
Okay.
I've been in a separation.
From who?
From my wife and family.
What's your wife's name?
Ruby.
Ruby. When's the last time you saw Ruby?
The last time I saw her was the 18th of this month. We met to, she requested me to sign over vehicles, or the titles to the vehicles, the vehicle that she drives, that were all in my name.
When's the last time you physically saw Ruby?
The day that I moved out, July 24th, 2022.
24th of 2022?
Or July 25th. When we separated, we were going on 22 years. Yes.
Okay. And during your marriage, how was disciplining your kids? How would you discipline your kids?
Yeah, I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay, that's fine.
Have you been since separated or since they lived here in the city of Islands? Have you communicated with your wife regarding like disciplining with your kids or their care or their physical well-being?
No.
So is she doing this on her own, just telling you how your kids are?
She's not telling me anything about the kids.
Who's this female Jody that your wife lives with? Do you know a female named Jody?
She is a therapist and a life coach, I know. And she's...
Do you respect her?
Do I respect her? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think she's a very honest, truthful person, yes.
Okay. You place value on Jody?
I don't know what that means.
Like, do you value what she says and how she treats? Is your wife a client of hers? Is your wife a partner of hers? Is your wife a roommate with her? Your kids are living in her house is what I'm trying to say.
I'm not aware of that, but I know that they've been in business for the last year filming.
Who's they?
Ruby and Jody. They film podcasts, and so every week a podcast goes up and I listen to it.
So I don't recall the exact time, but sometime before 11 o'clock today, we received a phone call from 911 on our dispatch that a 12 to 13-year-old boy was knocking on doors in a neighborhood asking for food and water, that he was severely emaciated, that he had...
What does emaciated mean?
Skinny, scrawny, malnutrition, not enough food, not enough water to sustain life. So he had...
I'm sorry, what?
He had duct tape on his extremities, on his hands, on his ankles, and those were covering rope burns that were used to tie him down. take a second and think about what I just said. That's the condition of your son. Given that information, your son was taken to the hospital. A warrant has been applied and granted by the Department of Child and Family Services to remove from your wife's care. So no one right now is going to have access to these two children based on their physical condition. Do you understand that?
I understand.
Would you condone that behavior?
Would I condone that behavior?
That's my job. My job is to find out your knowledge of the treatment of these
based on
precious
your description,
children.
no. But again, I don't know the details, or I don't know what's going on. But as you described that sounds
horrible, disgusting. No human being should be treated like that.
Okay.
That's my thoughts. But again, we might be different on that. We're gonna sit here for a second, okay? We're gonna go out and talk. I'm not saying you're still not free to go. Are you under arrest? Absolutely not. We just have lots of questions that we need to figure out. Lots. Okay?
Okay, because
your children are under medical care right now.
And what does that mean?
And it means that you don't have access to them. My understanding is that they are, what is that?
They're in the custody of DCFS.
And they will be for the next 7
There's a medical hold on them right now. So for at least the next 72 hours, based on our understanding.
At least the next 70.
They're in observation, they're being watched.
DCFS is going to provide you that information, and they can better answer your questions along those lines.
What's going to happen with my wife? I love my wife.
I don't know. I'm being honest with you. I don't know. Haven't had an interview with
I
you.
don't know if those charges against my wife.
Possibly. I think given the circumstances, that's highly appropriate. But again, I don't know your wife. I was hoping to gain some insight from you, but I don't necessarily know that that's something you wanted to.
I trust her.
A road you wanted to travel down with me, so.
And not without legal representation.
Yeah, alright, I get it.
But I love my wife, and I trust my wife. And so, I mean, this feels like getting run over by a steam truck while you're sharing with me today.
Yeah, I can tell you're caught off guard.
I thought I was just coming here to pick up my kids, and for what, I don't know what or why, but. And I was planning on taking them back with me. Like, I want to. You realize that I have a picture of my family on my wall, and I look at it every day, and I work every day, so I can back to my family and save my family. And everything you're sharing to me just sounds like a made-up story. Like I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, it sounds like a horror movie.
After being interviewed, Kevin was never charged with any crime. But the question that lingered was an important one. Would he stand by Ruby, or would he stand by his children?
So we went down to Jody's house in May of 2021. That was the first time I'd ever been there. And it blew my mind, as I'm sure you have walked in there and gone, how does a therapist live like this? Like, it doesn't really make sense to me. But we were there, and she opened up and talked about, her struggles and what was going on. And I gotta say, like, I'm a smart guy. I'm an engineer. I've designed and helped build some really big stuff. I'm been a college professor. I can't explain some of the stuff that happened while we were there. Like crashes in the basement while we were talking upstairs, and plates like in the kitchen just flying off by themselves, like full speed, smashing on the wall and falling to the floor like, by themselves. I can't explain it, but I saw it with my own eyes, and I don't have any way to explain it other than there's some crazy shit going on. Ruby was convinced that we could intervene and help Jody. I didn't want a thing to do with it. I tried to like get her bishop involved and say, hey, go to the priesthood and the church and all that stuff. Just go to your support network. But Ruby continued to be like, no, we can help. Like, she doesn't want that. Could you imagine like what would happen to her reputation if this got out and stuff? Let's help her. So we went down like a couple more times between May and August, but it reached the point where in August, her bishop at the time, a guy who's down there in Kayenta named Scott Galbraith. He's not our bishop anymore, but I mean, he was going over there like every night, and he'd be there for like 4 hours, and he'd be like, I'm fighting evil spirits, I'm casting demons out, I'm crazy stuff going on, and finally he got to the point where he's like, I can't do this anymore. Like there needs to be some sort of resolution. It was at that point that they said, why don't you take her up to your house? And I was like, oh, hell no. I don't want this in my house. But I was beaten over the head with it. Like, that's really insensitive. You know, she's done so much to help our family, and you're being selfish, and she has needs, and come on, like, it won't be for long. And so I relented, and I was like, okay, actually, you know, this could kind of be fun. Let's just make it fun, and we'll, like, she needs a vacation, so we'll just go take drives up the canyon and stuff like that. And it turned into just a crazy house. The moment she showed up in my house, just the weirdest crap started happening. Lights turning on and off, sounds of people walking in walls, and like sounds like footprints going up walls and across the ceiling, and like stuff floating around, and it was weird, and I hated it. And I became the resident exorcist. That was the title I came up with myself. I thought it was kind of funny, but it was my job to like go and give her blessings whenever she started to like go into a trance and go into possession, and which started to be a lot. And Ruby would go up and check on her. It started like every 4 hours at night, and then it moved every 2 hours at night, then it moved every hour at night, and then at some point Ruby said, you know what, I'm just going to start sleeping in there, and if I need you, I'll come down and get you. I'm like, that's kind of weird, but okay. And that was that. They started sleeping in the same bed, and then she started having like trances and stuff. I would say probably September, where she believed that she was going to heaven and seeing God and Jesus and talking with them. And she would get together with Pam Botcher. Ruby, Pam, and Jody would get together and do these interventions. That's what they call them. And so they'd just go up and lock themselves in a room for 4 or 5 hours, and then they'd come out and they'd all just be on cloud nine, and Ruby would share with me like she had this amazing vision, And I wrote it and recorded it all down. And we have a work to do from God, and you're part of it, and the bishop's part of it, and we're all part of bringing all this stuff to the world. And so it was, and it continued like that until I wanted to move on with life. And I would call it dragging my heels. So that was around October. And Jody flipped out because during one intervention, Chad was in the backyard with a bunch of friends. And it was my job to keep all the kids contained in the basement watching movies or playing video games. And I took the dog on a walk, and I thought they were done, but they weren't done. And Chad had all his high school friends over in the backyard. Jody flipped out. She was ready to come back to Ivan's on her own that night, and Ruby and Pam talked her into staying. But that was the first night where Ruby said, I want a separation from you. And it was an in-home separation. And so it was, it was hard. Basically, there were all these rules now placed on me. Like, I could leave when I wanted, but I couldn't come back until Ruby gave me permission. I couldn't come into the kitchen to eat until Ruby gave me permission. And the upstairs where Jody roamed was completely off limits. I couldn't go upstairs anymore in my own house. And there would be, Ruby would dictate all of the terms of how our interactions would be, when we would talk, and that was hard. And it was during that time that I really became, I would say, dependent upon Ruby. Like, if she said a kind word to me, like, my whole day was made, right? And so that separation continued all the way up until the holidays, maybe the last week of December, first week of January. And then Ruby ended that separation. Jody went home the second week of January. But by that time, like, Ruby, Pam, and Jody were completely determined to do this work that they felt God had for them. And I thought it was crazy. Like, I thought it was just batshit crazy. Like, Ruby, you have a reputation. You have a multi-million-dollar business, you have a brand, and you are just giving it away. She wanted to legally, like, work with Jody's attorney to basically give Jody 8 passengers and become an employee of Connections. So basically the contract was Ruby gives Jody everything, and Ruby gets nothing in return. Our manager, our YouTube manager at the time, was like, red flags. Like, I don't know how to tell you, she is scamming you. Ruby fired him. And I was like, I believe our manager, I think he's right. And Ruby started threatening me with another separation. And just like, this isn't about money, this is about doing God's work. And so we continued in that dynamic for the next 6 or 7 months until she went on a trip with Jody and Pam down to Arizona. And I think they, like, when I read her journal, she went into Mexico or something and bought drugs or something, like prescription drugs for the emergency kits. And when she came back from that trip, before she even brought the bags into the house, she pulled me in and said, I want to talk with you. And that's when she asked me to leave. And that was July 20th, 2022.
The people in Ruby's life who had never supported her from the beginning were her oldest daughter, Sherry, and Ruby's sisters. Sherry, in particular, had been actively working to get her younger siblings removed from that situation well before R ever made his escape. In many ways, Sherry was the reason the public started learning that something was seriously wrong. She posted an Instagram story with a single word, "finally." Alongside that word was a photograph showing a police officer on the sidewalk outside their Springville home. And over the next couple of days, she kept posting. In her first post, Sherry wrote, "Today has been a big day. Me and my family are so glad justice is being served. We have been trying to tell the police and CPS for years about this, and we are so glad they finally decided to step up." It was a statement that carried the weight of years of frustration, of feeling unheard, of watching a situation spiral while the system repeatedly failed to act. And it was clear, to anyone paying close attention, that Kevin was not happy about what Sherry had to say. The relationship between Kevin and Sherry was deeply strained. That tension became impossible to ignore just 2 days after Ruby's arrest, when Kevin took a step that stunned many people who were following this case. He attempted to have his own daughter Sherry arrested for burglary. What had Sherry actually done? She had gone to the family home and taken several items, passports belonging to herself, Ruby, and Chad, along with MacBook computers and personal journals. She then turned all of it over directly to police, believing it could serve as evidence in the investigation. The police, in turn, gave everything back to Kevin. And when Kevin went to pick those items up from the station, he made clear he wanted his daughter charged with a crime. Think about what that means. While his children were at the center of a child welfare investigation, his apparent focus was on silencing the one person who was actively trying to help them. Sherry was attempting to surface evidence. Sherry was trying to protect her siblings, and Kevin, by all appearances, was trying to keep everything buried. What makes this dynamic even more striking is something that emerged from one of the very first conversations Kevin and Ruby had after her arrest. One of the things Ruby asked him was, "Do you think the police are going to try to talk to Sherry?" That question said a great deal. It seemed to confirm what many had suspected, that both Kevin and Ruby understood exactly what Sherry knew and exactly what it would mean if she spoke to investigators. Within a few days of the arrests, a shelter hearing was held in juvenile court regarding Ruby and Kevin's 4 minor children. The purpose of the hearing was to determine where the children should be placed and who they should be placed with. What happened during that hearing shocked everyone present. According to witnesses and reporters who attended, Ruby made a series of deeply disturbing allegations against her own son, R. She accused him of conducting himself inappropriately toward other children, including E, and claimed that he had encouraged E to engage in similar conduct. She described this behavior using the label of a so-called padding game and stated that he had admitted to this pattern of conduct with many people, including neighbors and various family members. She also claimed that he had been consuming deeply inappropriate content since the age of 3. Now, when these allegations surfaced, a lot of people began asking the obvious questions. If this conduct had been going on for years, and there were allegedly so many people involved, why did Ruby, as the parent, never get her child professional help? Why was the answer not therapy, not counseling, not the authorities? Why, instead, did the response apparently involve having a family friend confine the children, deprive them of basic necessities, and subject them to prolonged mistreatment in a restricted space? Many people also pointed out that if a 3-year-old is somehow accessing deeply inappropriate content, that is, without question, a parenting failure. No 3-year-old has the ability to intentionally search for that kind of material. And if a child stumbled upon it accidentally at that age, they would have no comprehension whatsoever of what they were looking at. Others asked a more pointed question. Why would a 3-year-old ever be left alone with a device long enough for any of this to be possible? That question becomes even harder to answer when you consider that Ruby had cameras pointed at her children for virtually every waking moment of their lives. The entire purpose of the channel was constant, relentless documentation. So when exactly was R allegedly able to do any of this without anyone noticing? Then, in November of 2023, Kevin filed for divorce. His attorney, Randy Kester, initially told the press that Kevin refused to sling mud or point fingers. That was a notable statement given the serious questions circulating about whether Kevin could have stepped in and protected his children far sooner.
That's the first question that I asked Kevin, and I know that everyone has that question about why was he not there? Why was he not involving himself in his kids' lives during that period of time? But it's become abundantly clear that both he and his entire family were being manipulated by someone who's a so-called professional in mental health and in therapy and counseling, Jody Hildebrand. They came under her penumbra. She basically took over their lives And ironically, this is how twisted the advice was that she was giving them, was that Kevin needed to be out of the home, away from his children and away from his wife, separated from them in order to save their family and save their marriage. And Kevin's a man who was desperate to save his marriage and his family. He loved his wife, he loved his children, and but took this corny advice of this therapist, and was absent from the home for 12 or 13 months until all these horrific allegations came forward.
What about before then, though? I mean, there are a lot of allegations.
With regard to the previous allegations that were referred to DCFS.
If he's done nothing wrong, why is the state still keeping control of the kids, right? I mean, if he did nothing wrong in any other case, the other parent would be able to take care of the kids.
It's an absolutely fair question, but because of the absence, his absence, and because of the manipulation by Jody Hildebrandt upon these children, who she pretty much had under her exclusive control between she and Ruby, there has become a rift. These children have become brainwashed and actually, at this point, are being held by the state in an effort to finalize and get some expert professional help to help them overcome this brainwashing that they have.
In mid-December, Ruby entered a guilty plea. Under the terms of her plea agreement, she agreed to plead guilty to 4 of the 6 counts filed in connection with what happened to her children. She was also required to testify against Jody as a condition of the deal, and she faced a sentencing range of 1 to 15 years in prison for each of those 4 counts. Just over a week after Ruby's plea, Jody accepted the exact same deal. So what exactly did they plead guilty to? The court documents laid it out in exhaustive and disturbing detail. And I want to walk through this carefully, because what these documents reveal is not just what happened, it is a timeline. It is a record of decisions made, one after another, across an extended period of time, not a single event, not a moment of crisis. A sustained, deliberate campaign against children who had nowhere else to go. According to those documents, R was forced to perform physical tasks for extended periods, sometimes spanning multiple days. These included wall sits, carrying heavy boxes up and down stairs, and performing labor outdoors. He was made to complete this outdoor work without shoes and under the full intensity of summer heat. He was required to remain outside for several days at a time, through the day and through the night. I am consciously not going to detail the physical consequences of what R endured during this period. The court documents are part of the public record if you choose to look deeper. What I can tell you is that what was documented made clear that R was being denied basic necessities, including water, across multiple days. And when he managed to find a way to access water on his own, he was then punished for having done so. Beyond that, he was denied sufficient food. When he was given anything to eat, it was deliberately plain, while everyone else in the household ate regular, varied meals. He was kept entirely isolated from all other people and cut off from every form of normal activity, including books, notebooks, and any kind of electronics. And it did not stop there. After R attempted to leave for the first time in July, the situation escalated significantly. I am not going to go into detail about what the court documents describe regarding what followed, because it crosses into territory that this platform simply does not allow me to present. The records are publicly accessible if you want to research this further. What I can say is that what was done to R during this period went far beyond what any person should ever be subjected to, and what any child in particular should ever have to endure. What is perhaps most disturbing in a different way is the psychological dimension of what R experienced alongside everything else. Ruby and Jody worked systematically to undermine this boy's sense of reality. They told him he was evil. They told him he was possessed. They worked to convince him that everything being done to him was an act of love, and that his only path forward was complete obedience. It is difficult to find words for what that kind of sustained manipulation does to a child's mind. The way it reframes what is happening as something deserved, the way it teaches a child to distrust their own perceptions, and the way it turns the source of suffering into the thing they feel they must please in order to survive. R's younger sibling, E, endured much of the same treatment. E was also restrained and bound. She was subjected to the same physically punishing tasks, the same denial of water, the same forced time outdoors, and the same deliberate deprivation of food. She was repeatedly told that she was evil, that she was possessed, and that everything she was being put through was necessary for her obedience and her repentance. She was told it was all being done to help her. E was forced to work outside barefoot in the summer heat. She was made to run barefoot on dirt roads for extended periods of time. I am consciously not going to describe what was visible when she was examined on August 30th, the day of the arrests. The information is available in public records if you want to look deeper into this case. What I can tell you is that what those examinations revealed told a story no child should ever have to live through. It was cruel, it was disgusting, and none of it was excusable. Not a single moment of it. When police searched the property, they collected a tremendous amount of evidence. The house barely looked lived in. Close to 80% of it was completely empty. Now, to be fair, this was a 9,000 square foot home that is a lot of space to fill. But what made that emptiness so chilling was the context surrounding it. Airbnb guests had been staying in that very home at the same time these children were being held captive inside it. Think about that. Guests could have been on an entirely different wing of the building, going about their stay completely unaware of what was happening on the other side of the house. Some of the photographs taken throughout the home revealed what could only be described as makeshift care stations. There were large bowls filled with cayenne pepper and honey, gauze, plastic wrap, and bandages arranged nearby. Restraints of various kinds had been found throughout the home items that had clearly been used on the children. The sheer number and variety of these items suggested this was not improvised. This was deliberate. This was organized. Many of those restraints were discovered in what appeared to be a panic room. It was an underground concrete space, and the door to access it looked like an enormous bank vault, the kind of locking mechanism you would expect to see guarding a safe. But the size of a standard door frame, it was completely unlike anything you would ever expect to find in a residential home. And inside that space, investigators found a small mattress, a toilet, a microwave, and a sink. That was it. That was where these children were being kept. Think about how deliberately that space had to be prepared. This was not something that happened by accident. Someone made choices about what would go in there and what would not. And what was absent from that list tells you everything you need to know about what was considered important and what was not. Not books, not a window, not anything that might allow a child to feel like a person. Just enough to keep them contained. But perhaps the most disturbing discovery of all was Ruby's journal. More than 60 pages of handwritten entries. Think about that number for a moment. More than 60 pages, written in her own hand, documenting, in her own words, what was happening inside that house on a near daily basis. A significant portion of the journal was redacted in order to protect the identities and dignity of the children. But what remained, what was made available to the public, was enough to shake anyone deeply. And I have to be honest with you, going through those entries is one of the most difficult research experiences I have had with any case on this channel. Not because the facts are hard to find, because they are written with such complete absence of remorse that it does something to you. On July 1st, she wrote that R was to stay outside at all times and sleep outside, and was only permitted to come indoors to use the bathroom or the shower. No other reason would be acceptable. That was the rule she had set for a child. On July 9th, the day before R's birthday, she wrote about certain responses she had observed in him, responses which she attributed to what she called satanic choices, and framed entirely in spiritual terms. But the reality, which should be clear to anyone with a basic understanding of how prolonged fear and deprivation affect a child, is that what she was observing was the body and mind of a child in profound crisis. Those kinds of responses are entirely involuntary. That is not a spiritual failing. That is a child in a state of distress that had gone far beyond anything that should ever be allowed to continue. The very next day, she wrote about R not even knowing it was his birthday. He did not know. He had lost track of time to such a degree that the day came and went and he had no awareness of it. And Ruby's response to that was not concern. She called him a compulsive liar and described him as having a cold, dead heart, her words, written about a child who had just turned 12 years old. In that same entry, she mentioned E, saying she had been better behaved with Jody. She noted that she had given E a pixie haircut, adding in passing, "All her long hair is gone. No more distracting with hair." That one line says everything about how these children were seen, not as individuals deserving of care, but as problems to be managed and controlled. The hair was not about E. The hair was about control. I am consciously not going to describe what she documented doing to R on that same day, involving a garden tool she admitted to keeping nearby for this purpose. That entry is part of the case file and is available in public records for anyone who chooses to look. What I will say is that what she wrote, in her own words, about what she did and about his reaction afterward, is something that does not fit in your head. The details she included about the state he appeared to be and the fact that he seemed entirely unreachable, completely unresponsive to anything around him, tells you everything about what prolonged, systematic mistreatment can do to a child. Both Ruby and Jody then brought R to the pool. She went on to allude to some kind of malevolent force she believed was inside him and performed what can only be described as a deeply disturbing ritual. At one point during this, she held her hand over his face and said to him, "The devil lies and says I am doing something wrong to you. But R, what am I really doing?" And R, a child long conditioned to say whatever might keep him safe in that moment, responded, "You are putting oxygen on me to help me breathe." She also mentioned multiple times throughout the journal that R had been caught taking food and water. Let that sink in. A child being driven to steal food and water inside the very home where he was being held. Ruby also wrote that R had told her he wanted to go to jail and that he worshipped the devil. She then followed that up by noting that he had no real understanding of what jail meant. The irony of that observation, coming from the woman writing those very words, is almost impossible to absorb. She spoke to R as though he were possessed, saying things to him like, "Give your demon friend a message for me. I will not rest. I will not stop. I will not leave. I will fight him until the day you die." And what comes through most clearly in those journal pages is that none of what was happening to this child was accidental or incidental. She wrote about it plainly, with full awareness of her own choices. That was not confusion or a loss of control. That was deliberate cruelty, documented in her own handwriting. At one point, E believed she was finally going to be allowed to eat, but Ruby told her she would not receive food for a third day straight because she had, in Ruby's words, hardened her heart. E broke down completely. She lay on the floor. In response to that, Ruby cut more of E's hair and subjected her to what she referred to as the dog wash, a humiliating and degrading ritual she had invented for when the children had, in her view, displeased her. When E told Jody she wanted to run away, Jody told her plainly that she had no idea what would be waiting for her if she tried, a threat wrapped in a warning. At some point, Ruby and Jody, whom she referred to throughout the journal as G-Joe, began making plans to relocate to the desert, where the children would be required to work. She wrote casually about letting E sit in the pantry before the move and having R sit on the patio in the shade. And then just at the moment when the children might begin to think they had been given some small relief, dropping them, as she put it, like hot potatoes out in the desert, she wrote it without hesitation, without remorse. She also wrote about the day she shaved E's head completely. E had been carrying boxes up and down the stairs when she slipped. Ruby was convinced the slip was staged, that E had done it deliberately to avoid the work. In response, she subjected her to the dog wash again, shaved her head entirely, and sent her straight back to carrying the boxes. When E said it was too hot to work outside, Ruby told her that hell would be much hotter and that she should either get used to it or start making different choices. Then came the entry that Ruby herself described as a miracle. She wrote that she went to bed around 12:10 in the morning, with E on the floor right beside her bed and R on the patio just outside her sliding glass door. She then described waking in the middle of the night to find that R had run away. She woke Jody, and the two of them went out to search for him, getting into their cars and, in her words, racing the sun, racing the devil to find him before morning came. That time, they did find him. But this detail reveals something important. R had tried to escape before, more than once. And to attempt that escape, under those conditions, knowing what might happen if he was caught and brought back, required a kind of courage that is almost impossible to describe. Think about what it takes to make that decision. You are bound. You are depleted. You have been told repeatedly that you are evil, that your instincts are not to be trusted, that everything being done to you is love. And yet something inside this boy kept telling him otherwise. Something inside him kept saying that what was happening was wrong, no matter how many times the adults around him said the opposite. This was not a boy giving up. This was a boy fighting, repeatedly, to survive. Ruby's entry then noted, the sun started lighting the road just an hour and a half later, and then she wrote, the devil wants me in prison, my children dead. Now, if any of this sounds familiar, it should. The language, the framework, the spiritual justifications for what was being done to these children, the echoes of Lori Vallow, are unmistakable. The same certainty that the children were spiritually compromised, the same sense of mission, the same absolute conviction that what was being done to them was somehow righteous. And here's the truth that cannot be softened. Had R not successfully escaped, had E not been rescued, there is no doubt that these children would not have survived. None whatsoever. And given the vast, open stretches of desert that Ruby and Jody were actively planning to move them to, it is entirely possible that they might never have been found at all. That thought is chilling in a way that is hard to shake. It is why R's escape was not just an act of desperation, it was the act that saved both of their lives. Thank God he got out when he did, but that one act of escape came at a cost. After R managed to slip away that night, Ruby responded not with reflection or remorse, but with control. She began tying ropes to him while he slept, ensuring that he could no longer leave during the night hours. A child bound with rope, while the adults around him called it discipline. Another approach that Ruby and Jody devised was forcing the children to go to the local cemetery to pull weeds and pick up trash. But Ruby wrote in her own journal that they made the children go barefoot, deliberately, both to ensure their discomfort and to reduce any chance they might try to run. She admitted in her own words that she knew exactly what the conditions underfoot were like and that she had chosen those conditions on purpose. These were children. At one point, the owner of the cemetery came out and told Ruby that she was trespassing on private land and had to leave immediately. And how did Ruby and Jody respond? They explained to the children that the woman was simply in distortion, because of course, the moment anyone disagreed with what Ruby wanted, that person was obviously spiritually compromised. It was a convenient way to dismiss any outside voice, any outside witness who might have seen too much. During one of these sessions at the cemetery, there came a moment when R could no longer hold himself together. He had been out there for a very long time. And Ruby's response? She looked at him and said, "When your soul is dying, no one cares about your feet." A mother, speaking to her own child who was clearly in distress, responded with callousness dressed up as spiritual wisdom. Then, when R reportedly stopped what Ruby called manipulating and told her sincerely that he wanted to change, she denied even that. She told him, "No, that is not true. You did not stop manipulating because you were not uncomfortable." Reading through these journal entries is genuinely staggering, because the hypocrisy is relentless. Ruby accused these children of manipulation, while every single word she directed at them was a manipulation in itself. Now, there is one detail that Ruby returned to again and again throughout her journal entries that is genuinely chilling to think about. Over the course of multiple entries, she wrote about her and Jody's plan to purchase land in Arizona. She mentioned having cash in the bank and noted that if the property was right, they could move on financing immediately. She wrote that they had decided the situation with the children was, in her own words, not manageable where they currently were. And then in a later entry, she came back to the Arizona land again, writing about the children in a way that made her attitude toward them unmistakably clear, expressing in her own handwriting a wish for something terrible to happen to them, phrased with a casualness that is genuinely difficult to process. Can you imagine writing something like that about children in your care? And yet there it is, in Ruby's own handwriting. Toward the end of the journal entries, just before her arrest, Ruby mentioned that A and Jody had traveled to Tucson to look at a specific property spanning 500 acres. This was just a couple of days before R fled and before the arrest happened. If R had not found a way to escape that day, they very likely would have moved to Arizona, to a property of 500 acres, far from neighbors, far from oversight, far from anyone who might notice what was happening behind closed doors. 500 acres, in the desert, with no one around for miles. And as I said earlier, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that we would have been looking at another Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell situation before it was all over. The journal entries read like one confession stacked on top of another, and what they collectively describe is not a family in crisis, it is a plan. A deliberate, organized, escalating plan. And R's escape interrupted it at exactly the moment when it might have become irreversible. The journal entries read like one confession stacked on top of another. And then I kept coming back to Kevin and his reaction when he found out that Sherry had taken those journals and other items from the house. He completely lost it. He wanted to charge her with burglary. Which naturally raises the question, what exactly was in those other journals he was so worried about? Were there more confessions? Was Kevin worried that if law enforcement read them, he would be personally implicated in what had been happening? And that behavior does not stand alone. In one of Kevin's very first interviews, when he was told that his children had been rescued and that they were in a condition that concerned everyone who encountered them, he did not immediately ask how they were. Before he even processed that information, before he responded to hearing that his son had run away and been found in a deeply troubling state, his first question was about Ruby. His concern went immediately to his wife. And that is not the response of a parent hearing allegations like this for the very first time. That detail speaks volumes, and it raises a very serious question about how much Kevin actually knew about what had been happening inside that house. There are people who watched this case unfold and came away believing Kevin was simply a man who had been manipulated, controlled, kept at a distance. There are others who look at that question, do you think the police are going to try to talk to Sherry, and at his reaction to the journals, and they arrive somewhere very different. I am not here to tell you which interpretation is correct. What I am telling you is that the question deserves to be asked.
For which I stand before you today ready to take accountability. Jody Hildebrandt was never my business partner, nor was I ever employed by her. I have never received wages from her or connections. Jody was employed as my son's counselor in 2019, and in 2020 I paid her. Thank you to the officers in Santa Clara and the Ivan City Police. Nick Hallman, Brian Palufo, Cy Pikuvit, Mike Pondoyo in Tobler, John Ward, D. Lewis, and Chief Flowers. You were the angels who came and saved my children. I especially want to thank Detective Jay Bate. She plucked me out of a situation I didn't know how to get out of. And the moment she handcuffed me was the moment I gained my freedom. You were not the controlling ones. I was. Thank you to the medical staff at Intermountain Hospital. Your skill, tenderness, and professionalism helped to heal my children. Jody and I inflicted the injuries, not the hospital. Thank you to DCFS, the Children's Justice Center, Judge Basil, and other key adults. You've gathered my children under your wing and offered them love, compassion, encouragement. You were not the ones who were doing the brainwashing. Thank you to my Bishop Tom Hawks and my state president Jim Nilsson for reminding me of the Lord's love for the lost. So much pain and suffering would have been avoided had I followed and heeded your counsel. I was the one who was deceived, not you. Thank you to the Washington County Prosecutor's Office, Ryan Sham, the legal assistants and discovery clerks. Eric Clark, you exemplified to me how justice and mercy are meant to coexist. My charges are just. They offer safety to my family, accountability to the public, and they did show mercy to me. Thank you to my attorney, Lamar Winward, and his staff. I would not be where I am today without them. Thank you to Randy Kester for your limitless energy in healing my family. My dear friends, Pam and Roy, I'm so sorry for letting you down. Because of your association with me, your innocence was called into question. Yet, when I desired to return as the prodigal sister, unlike the prodigal's brother in the Bible, you synced step with my parents and ran out to greet me. Your capacity to love is unprecedented. Kevin, my husband of more than 23 years, you are the love of my life. I'm so sorry to leave to you to finish what we both started together. The ending of our marriage is a tragedy. It really wrapped around my heart, and a knot I'll never be able to undo. To my babies, my 6 little chicks, you were part of me. I was the mama duck who was consistently watering you to safety. I can see now that over the past 4 years I was in a deep undercurrent that led us to danger. I never led you to darkness knowingly. I was so disoriented that I believed dark was light and light was wrong. I would do anything in this world for you. My willingness to sacrifice all for you was masterfully manipulated into something very ugly. I took from you all that was soft and safe and good. I took from you your mother. How terrifying this must have been for you. I will stop crying. You're hurting your tender souls. You're so precious to me. I'm sorry. My choice To live in fear of the world has created a great vulnerability and a blind spot for me, where I have broken hearts and I've caused people to suffer and I have betrayed sacred trust. Watching my community respond to my charges with justice and mercy and grace and love is all the more evidence to me how wrong I've been. This world is full of really good people. And finally, I'm sorry for twisting God's word and distorting his doctrines. I am humbled and willing to serve a prison sentence as long as it takes to continue unraveling all of the misinformation I have believed and bought, swallowed, and acted out.
Sincerely love these children. I desire for them to heal physically and emotionally. One of the reasons I did not go to trial.
Now, if you thought that Ruby and Jody being sentenced meant their names and faces would quietly disappear from the public conversation, you would be very wrong. And one of the more meaningful reasons they have remained in the news is because of Ruby's oldest daughter, Sherry, and the book she released. She did not hold back. The book was packed with genuinely revealing details and offered a rare behind-the-scenes look at what daily life inside the Franke household actually looked like during that period. But one of the more significant things Sherry alluded to was the suggestion that Ruby and Jody had been more than just close friends or spiritual partners. She stopped just short of saying it outright, but she essentially confirmed that the two had been romantically involved. And honestly, I think most people who had followed this case closely had already suspected as much. But the fact that Sherry came that close to confirming it directly was still a genuinely significant moment. Sherry has also been remarkably busy beyond the book itself. She has become extremely active in political spaces. Last October, she testified in front of Utah lawmakers and made a direct argument that there is no such thing as ethical family vlogging. She used her own life and the lives of her siblings as a concrete and deeply personal illustration of exactly why meaningful regulation in that space is long overdue.
As a victim of an abnormally abusive mother, I come today as a victim of family vlogging. My goal is not to present any idea of a solution to this problem, but to shed light on the ethical and monetary issues that come from being a child influencer. When children become stars in their family's online content, they become child influencers. It is more than just filming your family life and putting it online. It is a full-time job with employees, business credit cards, managers, and marketing strategies. The difference between family vlogging and a normal business, however, is that all the children are employees. Children from before they are born to the day they turn 18 have become the stars of family businesses on YouTube, Instagram, and other social media platforms. Utah is specifically a hotspot for family content due to the LDS culture around family and the goal to share the church with the world. We also have large families, which makes family content more lucrative. Specifically, many parents film their regular family life as an online video blog called a vlog. But I want to be clear that there is never, ever a good reason for posting your children online for money or fame. There is no such thing as a moral or ethical family vlogger. At first, family vlogging is an alluring business that can bring high revenue. For my family, it became the primary source of income, as is often the case with most full-time family vloggers. Many child influencers are paid for their work, as I was, and this money has helped me in my adult life. However, this payment was usually a bribe. For example, we'd be rewarded $100 or a shopping trip if we filmed a particularly embarrassing moment or an exciting event in our lives. Or other times, simply going on vacation was expected to be payment enough, because most kids don't get to go on regular and expensive trips. Never mind the fact that the child's labor is actually what paid for the vacation or trip. There is no law in place to guarantee that child influencers get any money from their work. If a family account does not become an LLC, parents are taxed heavily for paying their children. But parents also receive tax write-offs for the regular clothes that they wear, the gas money used to drive places, and even the houses they live in. Anything that is filmed can be written off. And even after registering their business as an LLC, there is no guarantee that children will get paid. Any payment that does happen is under the table with no paper trail. And how do we determine how much a child should make from appearing in family content? What price is worth giving up your childhood? But despite any monetary payment children may receive, don't let this excuse the 24/7 labor that these children are subjected to. As a child, I was fully aware that I was an employee. The business was successful when I was happy or when I shared my hardships with the world. Some of our most popular videos were when my eyebrow was accidentally waxed off and the whole world saw a crying teenager when I just wanted to mourn in private. Or the time I was violently ill and got the leading role in the video that day. My friends became scarce because dates were filmed and none of my friends wanted to be on camera. The camera never stops and there is no such thing as a break from filming. At the time, I tell you I had a choice in what was filmed, but I've come to learn that every child influencer, in a way, suffers from Stockholm Syndrome. Most child influencers would probably tell you they have full control over what is posted, but the reality is that their parents bribe and shame them into posting their most vulnerable moments. In fact, many child influencers may tell you that they enjoy their work because of the monetary perks they receive or the fun experiences that they can have. After all, what child would say no to a fun vacation or shopping spree if all they needed to do was film an embarrassing moment? But as children, we do not understand the consequences of filming our lives and posting it for the world to see. We cannot give consent to our parents to post our lives. In any other context, it is understood that children cannot give consent, but for some reason, people think family vlogging is different.
And the truth is, sitting here in 2025 and recognizing that there are still essentially no meaningful regulations around family vlogging is genuinely baffling. We already have protections in place for child actors working in Hollywood. There are legal requirements that a percentage of a child actor's earnings must be placed in a separate protected account that a parent cannot simply access at will. That money is held in trust for the child. Family vlogging, by comparison, operates like the Wild West. A family can begin building a monetized audience around a child before that child is even born, sharing the experience of a pregnancy, collecting ad revenue, growing a platform all centered on a person who has never once consented to any of it. That child does not know they are being broadcast to potentially millions of strangers. They cannot agree or refuse. They receive nothing in return for the exposure, and yet the cameras keep rolling, the content keeps going up, and nothing about any of it is subject to meaningful oversight. That is the conversation Sherry has been fighting to force into the open. And after everything her family went through, it is a conversation that is long, long overdue. There is something deeply troubling that does not get discussed enough when it comes to family vlogging channels. When you place a child in front of millions of viewers, you inevitably attract more than just casual fans. You attract parasocial relationships, situations where people on the internet come to feel that they personally know the family, that they personally know the child, that they share some kind of genuine bond with a real human being they have never once met in person. And some of those people, in the most alarming cases, become fixated. They become obsessed in ways that cross from uncomfortable into genuinely threatening. That is a real danger to a child's safety. And the child did not choose any of this.
Lousy day at school. Don't be nice to anybody. Stay flat. Let people squish you. Bye. What are you crying at? What's your problem?
The most perfect and devastating illustration of all of this is what happened to Ruby's children. They had absolutely no say in when the cameras were on or when they were off. Their text messages were shared without their consent. Their most personal milestones, including something as private and significant as starting their periods for the very first time, were put on display for strangers to consume. These were deeply personal, pivotal, irreplaceable moments in their young lives, and they had zero input on any of it. Sherry is doing the hard and necessary work to make sure that no other children have to go through what she and her siblings went through. That means something. That truly matters. And the fact that she is still fighting, still testifying, still writing, still showing up after everything this family lived through says far more than words ever could.
Sherry's crying.
The good news is I did it on purpose.
Well, you obviously have no taste because this is terrible.
Has your mother ever ruined your life?
Whatever.
Do you want me to do it rounded?
Nope.
She was turned on by her pet, and now she feels like she's been turned on by her own mother. And her feelings are legitimate, and she has every right to be mad. I should have deliberated a little bit more with Sherry and told her, hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing a little differently. What do you think? Instead, I just assumed she would like it, and I did it without consenting with her. So I owe her the biggest apology.
Now, something else that Sherry touched on in her book was her relationship with her father, Kevin. And Kevin is a complicated figure, to say the least. Kevin was not quietly lurking in the background. He was an active participant, and not just in the early days either. He was involved throughout the majority of the period when everything first started coming to a head. And then, at a certain point, he simply stepped back. He allowed Ruby to have free reign and faded out of the picture. To this day, he has not been charged with anything.
No, there's no present for me.
There's presents for Mom. It's Mother's Day.
Well, I don't like it.
Well, we love Mom. Let go.
Sherry mentioned toward the end of her book that she was actively working to rebuild her relationship with Kevin. She also shared that Kevin was fighting for custody of her younger siblings, who remain in the custody of the state. Because in those early days, right after the initial arrest, Kevin appeared to still be deeply entrenched in the Connections way of thinking. He was all in on Ruby's side. And one of the most striking examples of that was his attempt to have Sherry arrested and charged for retrieving materials from the house materials she handed directly to law enforcement. He went after his own daughter, the daughter who was trying to do the right thing. And yet Sherry has said she is working to rebuild that relationship with him. She has forgiven him. Whatever the reason, the strength and grace it takes to pursue that kind of reconciliation is extraordinary.
I lose sleep over is when kids start self-sabotaging their own efforts.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that really concerns me.
Just to stick it to their teachers or to stick it to their parents or family.
And the only person they're really hurting is themselves.
Yeah, that's the kind of behavior that we're hoping this program can help Chad correct. And so
we're not thinking that anyone's going to be like fixed or corrected, but like
reveal it to him.
That's a good way to say it.
Yeah, because no one can fix anybody. A person has to choose if they're going to make changes in their lives. And so I think this experience will reveal Chad and everyone else who's out there to themselves, and they can learn to better themselves or just stay in the mud.
Yeah.
As mentioned, Kevin has been part of an ongoing court battle regarding custody of the younger children. The details of that process have been largely kept out of the public eye, and honestly, that is probably the right approach. These kids deserve privacy and some measure of peace as they try to rebuild their lives. And speaking of the children, there has been a small but meaningful update on how they are doing. Since they are all still minors, their names are being kept private, and most of the information about them has been appropriately shielded from public view. What we know because people who care about them chose to share it. However, the lead prosecutor on the case shared an update specifically about R and E, noting that both were doing considerably better. The prosecutor said, "I think people should know that the kids have put on weight. They are interacting, happy, and healthy. It is not like they are great, but they are light years better." Light years better. After everything those children went through, after all that was done to them, hearing that they are in a better place, that there is something resembling happiness returning to their lives, that is not a small thing. That is everything. I do not know how long the road to full healing will be for either of them. But knowing they are on that road at all is something to be genuinely grateful for. Now, in late January of 2025, Jody was back in court because of a lawsuit filed directly against her. The lawsuit came from a former client named Michael Tillman. Michael is suing both Jody and Ruby for racketeering and fraud stemming from their operation of Connections. And the central claim of this lawsuit should alarm anyone who has been following this case. Despite the fact that both Jody and Ruby are currently behind bars, Connections is allegedly still running. Not only are existing members continuing to engage with the organization as though nothing has changed, but according to the lawsuit, Connections is actively and deliberately recruiting new members. And it goes further than that. The lawsuit also alleges that current members of Connections, even now, are engaging in behavior toward children that crosses every boundary, following the same principles that Jody and Ruby promoted and practiced. In other words, nothing has stopped. The message is still being spread. The behavior is allegedly still occurring, and Jody, even from behind bars, still appears to believe in all of it and is still finding ways to push it forward. Sit with that for a second. 2 women are in prison. One of them was sentenced for crimes against her own children. The organization they built is allegedly still recruiting members, and nobody with the authority to shut it down has done so. That is not a rhetorical point. That is a fact with real consequences for real people right now.
And welcome to Connections. We're so glad you're with us. When I first started getting to know you, she's like, anger is my favorite emotion. I'm like, I don't know what I'm dealing with here.
Michael Tillman's involvement with Jody, Ruby, and Connections goes all the way back to 2015. He and his wife had sought Jody out for marriage counseling, looking for guidance and support during a difficult stretch in their relationship. What they found, according to Michael, was anything but help. He alleges that Jody's methods and her teachings created a massive rift in his marriage, one that ultimately led to their divorce and a deeply bitter custody battle over their daughter. And that fits squarely within the pattern of behavior that has been described throughout this entire story. Jody had a way of inserting herself into relationships, identifying the fault lines, and then widening them. She consistently positioned the man in the relationship as the source of the problem, and she would work her way in, methodically and deliberately, finding trust wherever she could, and then quietly dismantling whatever was there. But the lawsuit is still moving forward, and that means more information could come to light. Court proceedings have a way of pulling things into the open that no one wanted the public to see. Documents get filed, depositions get taken, details that were buried start to surface. So this case is far from over, and what we may still learn from it could be significant. The bigger concern, though, is connections itself. Whether that organization is still operating remains one of the most pressing questions surrounding this entire story. Because if it is, then this is not just a legal matter, it is a public safety issue. The track record here is documented. The harm it caused is on the public record. If Connections has not been shut down, then someone with the authority to act needs to step in and do exactly that. Not eventually, now. The stakes are too high to wait and see, and the people inside that organization deserve to know what the full picture actually looks like. The children in this case, R, E, and every Frankie kid who grew up on that channel never got to choose any of it. Not the audience, not the punishments, not the confinement. They did not choose to be filmed. They did not choose to have their most private moments broadcast to millions of strangers. They did not choose any of the adults who made decisions on their behalf. R chose to walk out that door anyway. At 12 years old, bound, starving, told repeatedly he was evil, conditioned to believe that his own perceptions could not be trusted, he found a stranger's house and knocked. That is not a small thing, that is survival, and it is the reason that story has an ending at all. What I keep coming back to, how does a system receive 18,000 petition signatures, multiple DCFS reports, and sustained public outcry, and still return a finding of unfounded again and again, case after case? How does that happen to a child in plain sight? And if Connections is still operating right now, still recruiting, still shaping how members interact with children, who exactly has the authority to stop it, and why has that not happened yet? Those are not rhetorical questions. They are the questions that need answers before someone else gets hurt. If you follow cases where the danger never looked like danger, subscribe. I do not rush the research. Every case on this channel gets the time it deserves. Next video, we are looking at another case where a closed community made it nearly impossible for anyone on the outside to see what was happening until it was almost too late.